The record should reflect that the jury is back in the courtroom. Welcome back, everyone. All right, please call your next witness.
Kelly Bowen.
Good afternoon. Could I have you raise your right hand so that I can administer an oath? Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, please be seated. Could you please tell us your full name and spell your first, middle, and last names?
Kelly Nicole Bowen, KELLYNICOLE
Ms. Tish-McGuire, you may proceed.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Ms. Bowen. And I'm just going to ask you to pull that microphone very close to you. Thank you very much. Were you at the Century 16 movie theater on July 19th, 2012?
Yes, I was.
Was that in Aurora, Colorado?
Yes.
Did that go into the early morning of July 20th of 2012?
Yes, it did.
What do you recall about the day of July 19th prior to going to the movie theater that day?
I remember trying to find somebody to go to the movie with.
Did you find someone to go to the movie with that night?
Yes, I did.
Who was that?
That was my friend Dylan Boxer.
How'd you know Dylan?
I know him through my boyfriend.
What time did you and Mr. Boxer arrive at the movie theater that night?
About 11 p.m.
What'd you do when you got to the theater?
We got our tickets and went to the procession stand and waited in line for the theater.
What theater did you go into that night?
Number 9.
How did you and Mr. Boxer go about choosing your seats in the theater?
We just kind of looked for where everybody was sitting and saw an empty spot above the railing and took it.
All right, so if you're in the theater, is that the raised kind of stadium seating in the theater?
Mm-hmm.
And what row above the raised stadium seating were you seated at?
2 or 3.
All right, and if you were facing the movie theater screen, and this is the movie theater screen, are you on the left side or are you on the right side?
It was more towards the left.
And if you could just, again, write it.
It was more towards the left.
What did you do while you were waiting for the movie to start?
We talked about how my boyfriend was out of town, and we were both kind of sad that he couldn't be there with us.
What happened during the movie that night?
There was a shooting.
All right, and what was the first thing that you remember happening that evening in your movie?
It would be the door slamming open.
All right, and what door are you talking about?
The emergency exit next to the screen.
So if you're facing the movie theater screen, where's that door located?
To the right-hand side.
What's the next thing you remember happening after the door swung open?
He just stood there with his legs spread apart.
So you saw a figure come in with their legs spread apart.
Mm-hmm.
What did you observe about that person?
He was observing us.
Right, what do you mean by that?
He stood there and stared for a moment.
All right, and you recall that moment?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do.
And how many seconds or minutes do you think that was?
Just a few seconds.
What do you recall after he was staring at the crowd?
He threw a canister above the crowd.
What do you remember about that?
I remember panic starting to set in when we heard the hissing and the can falling down the stairs.
What do you remember after the can falling down the stairs?
I remember the crowd kind of following the can and then hearing loud shots and flashes.
All right, now could you actually see the shooter?
Yes, I could.
And where was the shooter in the theater?
To the right of the screen.
And what do you recall about the shooter that night?
Intent.
Now, what do you mean by that?
I felt determination from the individual.
Objection, Judge. May we approach?
Yes. The objection is sustained.
Ms. Bowen, if you could talk about what you physically remember that shooter looking like, anything you remember that person wearing that evening.
Black clothing, straps across his chest, boots.
Do you remember anything about that on his head that evening?
It was fully covered.
Now, how were the movements of the shooter that you remember that evening?
Let me just caution you, ma'am, you can't talk about the things you mentioned before when I sustained the objection. So if you can describe the movements, that's what the question is. Describe the movements, okay? Go ahead.
They were very back and forth.
What do you mean about by back and forth?
Searching.
And what do you mean by searching?
Judge, I'm going to object. May we approach?
Yes. All right, the objection is sustained at this time under Rule 602 because it lacks foundation, and without foundation, it calls for speculation. And members of the jury, you're instructed that the answers provided to the questions to which I have sustained objections must be disregarded by you. So you should treat those answers as though you never heard them, okay? Thank you. You may proceed, Mr. McGuire.
Ms. Bowen, if you could please describe for the jury and just describe the movements that you saw from the shooter that evening.
Sporadic.
Now, were you able to see a weapon?
Yes, I was.
What weapon were you able to see?
I saw the shotgun first.
Could you see the shooter holding the shotgun?
Yes, I could.
In what way was the shooter holding the shotgun? If you could just physically describe how the shooter was holding the shotgun.
It was about mid-chest.
Do you recall if the shooter was holding the shotgun with one hand or two hands?
Both hands.
All right, and could you describe the movements the shooter was making as the shooter used the shotgun in the theater that night?
I'll caution you again that this is asking for your observations, not your interpretation, okay? So your actual observations that night.
Enough grip to hold.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Enough grip to hold the gun.
Could you tell where the shooter was shooting at that point in time?
Into the crowd.
Right? And what part of the crowd?
Closest to the screen first.
Did the shooter use the shotgun somewhere else after closest to the screen?
Yes.
Where did the shooter shoot next?
Fanned out more into the crowd with each shot.
And are you talking about the upper part of the stadium seating at that point in time?
Yes.
Did the shooter change location in the theater?
Yes.
Where did the shooter move throughout the theater?
Along the wall.
What wall are you talking about?
Next to the emergency exit.
So if you're facing the movie theater screen, was the shooter moving along the right wall?
Yes.
Okay. And what direction was the shooter traveling?
Towards the entrance of the theater.
When you say the entrance, are you talking about the same entrance that you would have come in as a patron to the movie theater that night?
Yes.
And how would you describe the shooter's movements? Like, what pace was the shooter walking at?
Slow at first, but he picked up speed.
At some point in time, did the shooter change weapons?
Yes, he did.
Please tell the jury about what you saw.
I looked down to make sure that my friend was okay, and he had the next gun in his hands the next moment I looked up.
When you say he, were you talking about the shooter had the next gun?
Yes.
All right. What was different about that gun?
The shots were coming at quicker intervals.
Could you tell what kind of weapon that was?
Objection. Foundation.
Sustained under 602.
Ms. Bowen, do you have any experience with weapons?
Yes.
What is your experience with weapons?
My family owns a couple of weapons, but I never shot them myself.
You've seen them before?
Yes.
Were you familiar with what a shotgun looks like?
Yes.
Are you familiar with what a rifle looks like?
Yes.
Familiar with what a handgun looks like?
Yes.
Based on your knowledge of what firearms look like, what firearm do you believe the defendant was using after the shotgun?
The automatic.
Is that a rifle?
Yes.
And what was different about the shots that were coming out of the rifle?
They were faster than the shotgun and had a different pitch to sound.
Where was the shooter in the theater when he was using the rifle?
He was closer to the raised part of the theater.
What do you recall seeing in the theater after you saw the shooter with the rifle?
My friend Dylan started to crawl to the right towards the shots, and I grabbed him and ducked down myself.
What did you and Mr. Boxer do after you had crouched down yourself?
At that point, the shots had changed again to the handgun.
Objection. Foundation, Judge.
Ms.
Overruled based on the previous foundation established.
Now, when you say they had changed, what was the sound that you were hearing after those rifle sounds?
They were singular and had a loud bark to them.
Well, if it's based on sound, I think you better establish additional foundation. So based on that last question, the objection as to foundation under Rule 602 is sustained.
Were you able to see the type of weapon that the shooter was using at that point in time?
Yes, I was.
And what type of weapon was that you believed?
It was a handgun.
What did you and Mr. Boxer do after you were crawling on the ground?
Someone had yelled to go to the exit at the top of the stairs. And so we had started that way to the left.
And where was the last place you saw the shooter in the theater?
He had disappeared behind the partition of the theater entrance
And is that on the right side of the theater or the left side of the theater?
on the right side.
And is that the hallway that goes back to the lobby area of the theater?
Yes,
That was the last place that you recall seeing the shooter.
yes,
So when you, after you heard someone say to go run to that exit, could you still hear shots at that time?
yes, I could.
All right? Tell the jury about how you were able to get out of the theater.
We had reached the edge of the seats and begun up the stairs. Something had spilled into my shoes, and I lose Dylan's hand at one point. And somebody picked me up and threw me into the seats.
And what did you think was happening at that point in time when you got picked up?
Objection, relevance.
Overruled.
That means you can answer the question, Ms. Bowen.
I wasn't sure that we were going to make it out at that point until Dylan grabbed my hand and we began up the stairs again.
So did Mr. Boxer find you in those other seats you had been thrown into?
Yes,
Did you describe for the jury what happened to your body as you were thrown into those other seats?
my upper back slammed down on the arms of the seat, and I reached out and Dylan was there, and he grabbed my hand and the strap of my purse and pulled me up.
Tell the jury about how you and Mr. Boxer got out of the theater.
We reached the top of the stairs and I tried to dial 911, and it was busy.
Do you recall seeing anything as you were walking up the stairs of the theater?
As I look back up from my phone and hanging up by the trash can and the exit door, somebody had not made it by the trash can.
Objection, Judge.
Overruled.
And did you observe anything else on the floors of the theater that evening?
I kept tripping on the stairs because there were shoes and flip-flops of people that had just left them behind.
Were you and Mr. Boxer able to get out of the theater that evening?
Yes, we were.
What happened when you got outside the theater?
We were looking for any signs of danger in the parking lot. And when we got to our car, we exited the parking lot and passed several police cars on the way out.
Were you able to make it home that evening?
Yes, I was.
Were you able to observe your body when you got home?
Judge, objection, may we approach?
Yes. The objection is overruled. You may proceed.
Ms. Bowen, could you tell the jury about what you observed on your body when you got home that evening?
We inspected ourselves for injury and found that we were covered in blood that was not our own.
Could you specifically describe what you noticed about your arms?
I had bloody handprints that I suspect is from the person that threw me into the seats.
Did you have any bruises to your legs?
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, at this time I would ask the court's permission to have Ms. Bowen approach the 3D model with the cordless microphone.
Yes.
Thank you very much. If you could grab that cordless microphone that's up there, Ms. Bowen. I'm going to have you come stand kind of right next to me right here. And if you could point on this diagram where you and Mr. Boxer were seated that evening.
We were sitting right about here.
All right. And where do you recall you sitting approximately? And where was Mr. Boxer?
I was sitting in the left seat, and he was sitting more towards the right.
All right. And could you describe for the jury where the shooter was when you first saw the shooter enter the theater?
He was right about here.
All right. And could you describe for the jury where that canister went that you saw the shooter throw?
The canister came up to about here and rolled down.
Could you describe for the jury where the shooter was when the shooter was holding the shotgun?
He came up about here parallel with the first row of seats.
All right. And did the shooter move anywhere in the theater while he was using the shotgun? You
Yes.
could show the jury where that was.
He took a few steps up to about the third row.
All right. Where was the shooter when the shooter was using the rifle?
Approximately the same space.
Okay. And could you just show on the diagram for the jury where the shooter walked with the rifle?
Up to about here.
All right. And could you describe for the jury where was the last place that you saw the shooter?
Right about here.
Right. So is this the hallway you were talking about earlier about where you believe the shooter disappeared to?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And could you describe for the jury where it was that you exited the theater?
We exited through this exit here.
Right. And where was it that you got thrown into the chairs?
I'd say between these two rows. I can't remember exactly.
And do you recall where in the seats that you landed? Approximately.
Somewhere within the first seat or so.
Right. Thank you very much, Ms. Bowen. You can take your seat. Your Honor, may I approach Ms. Bowen with what's been marked as People's Exhibit 1113?
Yes.
Ms. Bowen, do you recognize that diagram?
Yes, I do.
All right, did you draw that diagram?
Yes, I did.
Does that fairly and accurately excuse me, does that fairly and accurately represent what you remember happening in a theater on July 20th of 2012?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I would move for the admission of that exhibit.
Any objection?
Judge, I would object as cumulative to the testimony about the locations at the model.
Can I see that? Ms. Bowen, please.
And Your Honor, to clarify, I'm not asking to publish the exhibit. I'm just asking for its admission for the jury to have for deliberations.
All right, will counsel approach for a moment, please? the objection is sustained.
I have no further questions, thank you.
All right, do you have any cross-examination, Mr. King?
No, thank you, sir.
The jury may have a question. All right. Ms. Tish McGuire, do you want to approach to retrieve this?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. We can mark it later.
Thanks.
Thank you. Would counsel please approach? Ms. Bowen, the jury has submitted some questions that I have determined are appropriate under the rules of law and other applicable rules of evidence. The first question is, do you remember at what point in your story the shooting stopped completely?
I don't recall.
The next question is, did the shooting resume after the shooter entered the right theater entrance, if you know?
Coming down the stairs of the lobby, there were more sounds of gunshot.
All right, Ms. Tish McGuire, any follow-up questions based on those questions?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly. So Ms. Bowen, when you went out this top exit door at the very top of the theater, is there a balcony area when you get to the top of that area?
Yes, there is.
And then did you have to go downstairs to get to the lobby area?
Yes.
Is that the location where you were when you heard more gunshots?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. No further questions.
Is there a follow-up question, or are there follow-up questions based on those questions, Mr. King?
No, Your Honor.
All right, may this witness be released from her subpoena, Ms. Tish McGuire?
Yes, please.
Without objection.
All right, Ms. Bowen, thank you. Call your next witness, please.
Judge, the people would request to call Kelly Elias in for some brief foundational testimony to the next exhibit.
Okay. You solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please be seated. Okay. Thank you. All right, tell us your name for the record, please, and spell your first, middle, and last names.
My given name is Hans, H-A-N-S, middle initial A as in Andrew. Last name is Elias, E-L-I-A-S-S-E-N. I go by my nickname that I've had all my life, which is Kelly, K-E-L-L-Y.
All right, will counsel please approach? Members of the jury, there is a matter that I need to take outside your presence, and so we're going to take a short break. Don't go too far. Hopefully, we can take about a 10-minute break, only a 10-minute break, and then we'll come and get you, okay? And sir, we'll have you step outside for a moment too, please, Mr. Eliason. Please be seated, everyone. The record should reflect that the jury has exited the courtroom now. All right, the record should reflect that given the note submitted by juror number 557, we're going to bring that juror in at this time outside the presence of the other jurors and outside the presence of the witness as well. Apparently, juror 57 knows this witness, Mr. Eliason. All right, let's bring her in, please. The record should reflect that juror number 557 is now in the courtroom. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
All right. You submitted a note that says, I know this witness. And the note was submitted with respect to witness Hans Andrew Eliason, who goes by Kelly Eliason. How do you know this witness?
He's a friend of the family's. I see him usually once a year at a Christmas Eve party.
Do you remember whether you circled his name in the questionnaire when you filled out the questionnaire?
I didn't recognize it, to be honest.
Okay. Well, and I know that there were a lot of witnesses' names provided, so how long have you known this individual?
I'd say 5 or 6 years.
And you said that he's a friend of the family's. Can you give me more details about that?
So my husband's family has a very large extended family, and every year they just have a big Christmas Eve party. So he's friends with my husband's wife's husband. So
Wait, I didn't follow that.
my husband's sister, he's friends with his brothers. So it's my brother-in-law, and then it's a friend of his, I think.
So your husband's sister is friends with the witness's brothers? Is that right?
No. Sorry, my husband's sister, her husband, it's his brother that they're friends with. So again, it's just a very large extended family. Sorry. I don't even know what he would be technically.
All right.
Brother-in-law.
And how do you describe your relationship with this witness? Would you say it's a friendship or an acquaintanceship?
It's just an acquaintance.
An acquaintance? Okay.
Yes.
And anything about that acquaintanceship that you think affects your ability to be a fair and impartial juror in this trial?
No.
Anything about that acquaintanceship that in any way affects your ability to assess this witness's credibility in the same way that you would assess any other witness's credibility?
No.
Anything about your acquaintanceship with this witness that would interfere in any way or affect your ability to assess his credibility pursuant to my instructions?
No.
And so are you confident that if he testifies, and it looks like he will testify, that you will be able to assess his credibility pursuant to my instructions just the same way as you would assess the credibility of other witnesses?
Yes, sir.
And your answers seem confident. Am I reading you correctly?
Yes.
All right. Do you have any other concerns about this that you wish to talk to me about?
No, sir.
And anything about the acquaintanceship that concerns you in terms of your verdict in this case and having to justify it at some point to this witness in the future if you ever run into him, or having to explain anything to him?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, let me have you step out for just a moment, okay? Thank you. All right, the record should reflect that juror number 557 has stepped out of the courtroom. Are there any other questions that the people want me to ask this juror, Mr. Edson?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Any other record that the people want me to make?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Any other requests that the people want me, that the people are making at this time?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Mr. King, any other questions that you would like me to ask juror 557?
No questions, Judge.
Any other record that you would like me to make?
Judge, we think that given that Mr. Eliason is not a peace officer, he's an employee of the district attorney's office. He's a direct agent of the district attorney. That being the case, and given the nature of this relationship and the ongoing nature of this relationship, I think that we need to ask that this juror be excused.
All right, what's the people's position with respect to that request?
A quick moment, please.
Yes.
Judge, we would object to releasing this juror based on the record that's been made thus far. First of all, Mr. Eliason is a peace officer. He's a post-certified individual. He's a senior investigator with our office. We don't think that just simply because he's an employee of our office changes any sort of aspect of his testimony in this particular case, particularly given what he's being called for the limited purpose of the upcoming exhibit, as I alluded to. So, Judge, we would object at this time.
Okay. All right, Mr. King, anything else from you?
Judge, I would just say that with regard to the limited purpose that Mr. Eliason's being called for here, I acknowledge this may be, I don't know what this purpose is, but it seems like it's limited. Mr. Eliason has not played a limited role in this case, though. He's done extensive interviews with with a good portion of the eyewitnesses in the case, including numerous interviews with expert witnesses in this case that will be hotly contested as to what the contents of those interviews were. So I suspect he may play a larger role than is being represented here right now. And with regard to whether he's post-certified or not, my point is that he's not an employee of a law enforcement agency. He is an employee of the district attorney's office. He is their direct agent, and I believe the court should analyze this as if one of the prosecutors were recognized.
All right. Do you have any objection if I bring her back and ask whether she knows how this witness is employed? Mr. Edson?
No objection.
Mr. King?
I have no objection to that, Judge. I frankly think it's irrelevant at this point because she's going to find out very, very soon. Whether she knows now or not, she will know very soon, and her relationship is still the same.
For what purpose are the people intending to call this witness?
Judge, at this time, we're calling Mr. Eliason merely as a foundational witness to People's Exhibit 1077. Mr. Eliason spoke with an individual at Motorcycle Depot. It's an invoice for Motorcycle Depot. Mr. Eliason wrote on the original copy of the invoice, and it states original received from Adam Levy on January 13th, 2015, and then has his initials. So my intent was to call him to authenticate that portion of the invoice because the other witness from Motorcycle Depot would not be able to authenticate the writing on it, and that was the limited purpose.
Does the defense object to that note not being authenticated?
Judge, I don't think that it changes the analysis because, as I said, I don't think that Mr. Eliason's role in this case is limited to this one note. He played quite an extensive role. If this was the one thing that he had done, I think we could solve this problem by doing exactly what the court is suggesting, but I don't think that that eliminates the problem, so we would object to that.
Well, but at this time, this is all that's before me. I can't engage in predicting what's going to happen or what's not going to happen. It's possible that he may be called again as a witness. It's possible that he may not. And so if there's no objection, if there's not going to be an objection or a problem with the note not being authenticated, then we can proceed without the prosecution calling him at this time, and the prosecution can call him later if they want to, and if the prosecution calls him later, then we can address the issue at that time. But we don't have to cross that bridge at this time unless there's an objection to the note, in which case the prosecution has to call him, and I do have to address this. So,
Judge, can we have a moment to discuss that?
yes?
Thank you, Your Honor. Upon reflection, we have no objection to stipulating to the admission of this for this limited purpose. We would ask that if at the time that Mr. Eliason should be, or the prosecution intends to call him later in the trial, that we'd be able to approach the bench and address the issue with the court at that time, prior to his testimony.
Okay, all right. I still think it makes sense for me to ask if she knows who he's employed by, and if the issue comes up again, I may deal with that. I don't know whether an instruction preventing the prosecution from eliciting that information would address the concern, but we're not there yet. I think it makes sense for me to ask at this time, just in case, unless the parties think I should defer on that as well. Mr. Edson, do you have a position?
We take no position, Judge.
All right, Mr. King, do you have a position? Just on the question of whether she knows how he's employed.
No, Your Honor.
All right, no, you don't have an objection. Okay, let's bring her in, please. Juror 557 is now back in the courtroom. Thank you for your patience.
Sure.
One question I have, do you know how Mr. Eliason is employed?
I believe some kind of law enforcement, but I don't know exactly.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Sure.
Thank you. The record should reflect that Juror 557 has exited the courtroom now. Since there's no objection to the note on Exhibit 1077 being authenticated, that renders the prosecution's need to call Mr. Eliason at this time moot. They don't need to call him at this time. Now, if at some point in the future you need to call him, Mr. King, you can bring up the issue again, but without getting my permission, the prosecution cannot elicit from this witness that he's employed by the district attorney's office. You can say he's law enforcement, and that's it, but you have to get the issue before me outside the presence of the jury. Mr. King sounds like may want to bring it up again, but unless I hear any objection to that, that's how I'm inclined to go, okay? All right. With that, let's see if we can bring the jury back in. Actually, before you do, does anybody want me to say anything with respect to Mr. Eliason not being called at this time? I mean, the jury obviously saw him take the witness stand. Does anybody want me to say anything to the jury?
Judge, I'm comfortable with the court just asking the people to call their next witness and we move forward.
Mr. King?
I think that makes sense.
Okay, we'll do it that way. Thank you. Please be seated, everyone. The record should reflect that the jury is back in the courtroom. Members of the jury, thank you for your patience. I appreciate that. All right, Mr. Edson, call your next witness, please.
We'll call Adam Levy.
Come around this way. Good afternoon, sir. Let me have you raise your right hand for me, please, so that I can administer an oath. You solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Please be seated.
Thank you.
Could you please tell us your full name for the record and then spell your first, middle, and last names?
Adam Levy, Adamlevy.
Mr. Edson, you may proceed.
Thank you. I completely mispronounced your last name.
That's okay.
Sir, what do you do for a living?
I own Motorcycle Depot in Aurora.
What is Motorcycle Depot?
It's a parts, accessories, and motorcycle sales dealership.
I'm going to refer you back to June of 2012. Were you an owner of Motorcycle Depot back during that time period?
Yes, I was.
Where was that? Well, let me ask this. Is that a physical storefront location?
Yes, it is.
Where back during that time period was it located?
231 Airport Boulevard in Aurora, which is directly across from Pickens College.
Okay. Fair to say it's not in that location today?
Correct.
Back during June of 2012, aside from that college you just described, can you kind of give us a general location of Aurora where that's located?
It's Airport and 2nd Avenue, a little bit south of Airport and Colfax.
Are you familiar with Buckley Air Force Base?
I am. It would be on the west side of the Air Force Base.
Do you sell at Motorcycle Depot riding type of clothing?
We do.
Does that include footwear, boots, things of that nature?
That would be correct, yes.
Sometime after July 20th of 2012, were you contacted by anyone within law enforcement about a potential purchase that may have occurred at your store in June of 2012?
I was the second week of January, around January 7th.
What year would that have been?
2015.
2015, okay. Were you able to locate records associated with Motorcycle Depot for a June 21st invoice?
I was.
Was there a particular customer name that you were requested to look for?
I'm sorry, June 21st, what year?
2012, I'm sorry, Judge.
All right, thank you.
Was there a particular customer?
Hold on, he's got to testify, so you got to ask him that question.
I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead here. Let me just backtrack here. Was there a particular customer that you were requested to locate an invoice for?
James Holmes.
And what date was that invoice?
June 21st of 2012.
Were you able to locate that invoice?
After a day or two of pulling some paper copies, yes,
Okay. Are you a custodian of records for Motorcycle Depot?
I am.
Are you the sole owner of that store?
My wife is an equal partner.
Okay. Anyone else?
Absentee partner.
Anyone else besides yourself and your wife?
No.
How are your customer sales records and invoices maintained for Motorcycle Depot?
Besides electronically at present, when the time elapses and we need to store them, they get stored in annual storage boxes and stored for 7 years.
So when you were requested for the June 21st, 2012 invoice, how is that particular record stored?
Within its calendar year of a storage box for sales by month.
Is that invoice record kept in your normal and ordinary course of business?
Yes.
Is that invoice, to the best of your knowledge, accurate and reliable as far as the information contained in the invoice?
Yes,
Did you in fact provide a copy of the invoice to law enforcement?
I did.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness, please?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
I've handed you what's been previously marked as People's Exhibit 1077. Do you recognize that?
I do.
What is that?
It's the invoice for James Holmes,
What is the date associated with that invoice?
June 21st of 2012.
Is this the actual invoice you provided to law enforcement?
It is correct, yes.
Does this invoice fairly and accurately depict the items purchased and the records associated with the June 21st, 2012 purchase by James Holmes?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, I would move for admission of People's Exhibit 1077 at this time.
Is there any objection?
No objection.
Without objection, P-TR-1077 is admitted and may be published.
Thank you. If we could please publish 1077. A couple of things, sir. I need to have you keep speaking in the microphone. You still have the actual exhibit of 1077 in front of you, and I also have it up on the screen for the jury to see. Fair to say that first middle section at the top there, the 231 Airport Boulevard, is that the location of your motorcycle depot back in 2012?
That is correct.
Okay, so what I'd like to ask you about is, can you look on the top left of People's Exhibit 1077 at the invoice date? What is that date?
June 21st, 2012.
Below that is a billing address, and all the way to the right is a shipping address. Who is that information related to?
The customer, James Holmes.
Is there a phone number associated with that?
There is 858-449-0348.
To the best of your knowledge and review of this invoice, was this an online purchase or a face-to-face purchase, or what?
This was a walk-in purchase.
Do you know if you personally were involved in this sale?
I do not.
Do you know if you could tell who was involved from your company was involved in the sale?
Not by this invoice, no.
Why is that?
There is only 2 or 3 people that worked for us. We didn't track employee sales.
Based on this invoice, we still have published People's Exhibit 1077. What was this? What were the items that were purchased?
There's a pair of Icon black Super Duty boots in a size 11.
What are Icon Black Super Duty boots?
They're a popular motorcycle riding boot.
Is that particular item still available today?
That particular style is no longer current. It couldn't be ordered today.
But back during that time period?
One of the most popular boots on the market.
How much, if you can tell here, how much was the sale for?
$120 plus your sales tax.
Okay. I'll move this down here in a moment, but while we still have 1077 on the screen here, can you tell the jury about how this item was purchased, the invoice payments, please?
It was paid by credit card ending in 2217.
If we could scroll down to perhaps the second half of People's Exhibit 1077. What was the grand total, including sales tax and such?
$129.72.
Right now, we've got about the mid to bottom portion of People's Exhibit 1077 published on the screens. I see something over on the left side. It says, "Thank you for your business." Do you see that area?
I do.
What is below that area, if you know?
It's the signature of James Holmes, the person that would have purchased and signed for his credit card purchase.
Is that something that's typically contained within your invoices and your sales documents?
It is. That's what we used for the receipt of credit card purchase.
Okay. Just if I could have one moment, please.
Yes.
Nothing further at this time, Judge. Thank you.
Ms. Spengler, do you have any cross-examination?
No, I don't. Thank you, but can we approach briefly?
Yes. All right, there do not appear to be any questions from the jury. Mr. Edson, may this witness be released from his subpoena?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you.
Is there any objection, Ms. Spengler?
No objection.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Call your next witness, please, Mr. Edson.
Judge, the people would request Roger Erikson be allowed to testify.
Good afternoon, sir. Could I have you raise your right hand for me so that I can administer an oath? Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
All right, please be seated. Please tell us your full name and spell your first, middle, and last names.
My name is Roger Parkinson Erikson, Rogerparkinson Erikson. I'm most commonly known as Eric Erikson.
All right, Mr. Edson, you may proceed with your direct examination.
Thank you. Sir, how are you currently employed?
Currently, I'm retired.
Before you retired, I'm going to direct your attention to June of 2012. How were you employed back then?
I was owner-operator of Iron Buffalo Motorcycle Training.
What is Iron Buffalo Motorcycle Training?
We would offer courses for beginning and experienced riders that would include license testing and insurance discounts.
Where would you generally handle, or not handle, how would you, where I should say, would those classes be held?
The bulk of our classes were held at the old Lowry Air Force Base on the Lowry campus that straddled the Denver-Aurora line.
Okay. Where roughly in Aurora, Denver would that be?
Basically 11th and Yosemite.
Describe the motorcycle classes, if you would please, in general. What do they contain?
The basic rider course, which was the bulk of our business, was a 15-hour course with 2/3 hands-on, 1/3 in the classroom. Class size would be 12 with 2 instructors, and we would take people from the very basic skills up through accident avoidance skills and the license test.
Were you an owner of Iron Buffalo?
I was. My wife and I were co-owners.
Were you an instructor with Iron Buffalo?
I was.
Did you also employ other instructors?
I did.
Do you know an individual by the name of Mark Magruder?
Yes.
Who is that?
He was one of my instructors. I trained him as an instructor, I believe, in 2009.
Back in 2012, specifically June of 2012, how would one enroll in one of your motorcycle riding classes?
About half would enroll by calling us up, and the other half would enroll through online registration through our website.
Is there any sort of prerequisite that are required before somebody could take one of your motorcycle classes?
Basically, they would have to be over 18 with a Colorado license.
Was there any sort of interviewing process that was required before someone could take one of your classes?
No.
Back in June of 2012, were you a records custodian for invoices and records and documents associated with Iron Buffalo motorcycle riding classes?
Yes.
Does that include those records of folks who would sign up online to take the classes?
Yes.
Did you yourself, as a co-owner of Iron Buffalo, would you maintain those records in some sort of fashion?
Yes, we were required to maintain those kind of records for 7 years by the insurance company and the Colorado Department of Transportation because we worked under contract with them.
Back in July of 2012, were you still part of Iron Buffalo motorcycle riding class?
Yes.
Were you contacted at all by law enforcement requesting information related to a student that potentially was part of your classes?
Yes.
Did you provide that information to law enforcement?
Between my wife and me, yes.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness, please?
Yes.
Sir, I've handed you what's been, there are actually two separate sets of documents there. People's Exhibit 1090A and 1090B. Do you see those documents?
Yes,
What I'd like to ask you about is specifically 1090A. So I believe that's a front and back document there. Do you see that document?
I do.
2 pages, is that correct?
Yes.
Do you recognize those 2 pages?
Yes, this would be a printout of the notice I would get when somebody signed up on the internet.
Is that a record that you kept as part of your normal and ordinary course of business of Iron Buffalo motorcycle riding class?
I normally would keep these records electronically. This is a printout of that electronic record, yes.
Okay. Is that a copy of the electronic record that you provided law enforcement to this particular transaction?
Yes.
This particular transaction, did it associate with any particular student's name?
Yes. It lists
Go ahead.
James Holmes.
Was there a date associated with that particular record as far as the order date?
There is.
What is that date?
Give me a moment, please, so I can find it. I haven't worked, I retired shortly after this period. It was created Wednesday, June 20th, 2012 at 18:18. So
Does this record fairly and accurately depict the invoice, the records associated with this online registration for James Holmes of June 20th, 2012?
yes,
Is this document, understanding that it may be a printout of your electronic records, nonetheless a fair and accurate record kept in your ordinary and normal course of business back when you were owner of Iron Buffalo?
yes.
Judge, at this time I would move for admission of People's Exhibit 1090A.
Any objection to P-TR-109A?
At this point, Judge, I don't think we've laid an adequate foundation. I think that it's still hearsay.
All right, give me a moment, please. The objection is sustained under 803, Rule 803-6, as the insufficient foundation having been laid.
Sir, I'm going to again direct your attention to People's Exhibit 1090A. Do you have that in front of you?
Yes.
That particular record, is it or was it made in the regular course of your business?
The paper copy of the electronic copy.
Well, first of all, the paper copy, did that come from the electronic copy you previously testified to?
Yes.
Okay, we'll start there. The paper copy that you have before you, does it appear to be an accurate and reliable copy from the electronic information, the electronic records that you previously testified to?
Yes.
Okay, that particular paper copy that's in front of you now, understanding that it came from the electronic records you referred to previously, was that made in the regular course of your business?
No.
Why is that?
I never printed these out unless there was a question. I can see from the date of the printout here that I printed this out at the request of law enforcement on July 21st, 2012.
Okay, let me rephrase the question. So the information contained, not when you actually printed it out, I'm talking about the information contained therein, that information that you testified to, is that information a record that you keep as part of your business?
Yes.
That information that's before you now, is that information contained as a regular, is it contained within the regular course of your business?
Yes.
Okay. To the best of your knowledge, the keeping of that record, understanding it's a printout of your electronic copies, is that done in the regular course of your business?
Can you ask that again, please?
Sure. The paper copy that you have before you, fair to say you've testified that it came from the electronic records that you keep as part of your normal course of your business, correct?
Yes.
When you were requested by law enforcement to retrieve that document and you printed it out as you testified to, were you acting in the regular and routine course of your business?
I'm sorry, I'm still not sure I get
Okay.
the question.
So let me ask it this way.
Okay.
Were you requested by law enforcement to obtain a record associated with a June 2012 membership request,
Yes.
or writing course, I should say?
Yes.
Okay. Those records, how are they normally maintained in your business?
Normally, this would have been maintained on a server. The system was a system through GoDaddy, a shopping cart system, so I would have access to it through the internet. I would also have received this information through email, and I would have kept a copy of this information in my email files.
All of that, is that done in your normal and ordinary course of business?
Yes.
When you were asked by law enforcement to go and retrieve a particular document, were you acting in your ordinary course of business and going getting that document?
Yes.
To the best of your knowledge, as far as the information that's contained within People's Exhibit 1090A, is that information accurate? Was it kept accurate, as you've just described?
Yes.
To the best of your recollection, you've somewhat testified to this already, but the information that you have within People's Exhibit 1090A, was that information made within a reasonable time of when you were requested to obtain that record?
Yes, I would have printed this out instantly as law enforcement was sitting around the table with me.
And when you're looking at People's Exhibit 1090A, do you have information? I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. When you're looking at People's Exhibit 1090A, do you have knowledge about the information that's contained within that document? Are you familiar with that document?
Yes.
Judge, I would again move for admission under 8036 for People's Exhibit 1090A.
Mr. King?
Judge, I would persist in my objection. I don't think that we've laid a foundation that this is a contemporaneously made record.
Would counsel please approach? The objection is sustained.
Sir, do you still have People's Exhibit 1090A in front of you?
Yes.
People's Exhibit 1090A, is that a copy of a computer entry made in the regular course of your business?
Yes.
is that entry, that computer entry, made in the regular and ordinary course of your business?
Yes.
Sir, People's Exhibit 1090A, those participating in the making of that particular record that you have in front of you, were they acting in the routine and ordinary course of your business?
The record would have been generated by the person paying for the course.
Understood. The record as you obtain it.
As I obtained it?
Correct.
I would have obtained it through the shopping cart report feature because I owned the merchant account.
Okay, so when an individual signs up for your class online, that information, is that kept, and is that record kept in the routine course of your business? That's my question.
Yes.
And when you keep that record, are you acting in the routine course of your business, when you're keeping it as you just described?
Yes.
To your knowledge, are the input procedures accurate related to those records?
Input of,
When someone goes online to sign up for your course, you receive that information, is that correct?
correct.
That information, is it then inputted or otherwise transmitted in some sort of way that you keep it as a business record?
Yes.
To your knowledge, is that information accurate in the way that it was transmitted? Is it accurate?
Yes.
Are those input procedures accurate?
Yes.
To your knowledge, and again, you've testified this previously, I'll ask you again, People's Exhibit 1090A, after the entries that you just described were made, were they made within a reasonable time after that particular transaction was involved or made?
Wait, he did not testify to that previously. He testified to a different question previously. So you can ask him the question, but he hasn't testified to that. Ask the question again.
Sir, when were you approached by law enforcement to retrieve this record?
It was, it would have been the July 21st. So I remember it was within 48 hours of the incident. My wife and I were sitting with our grandson watching a rerun of Flipper.
Okay. My question is, when were you approached by law enforcement related to this?
It would have been July 21st, the evening of July 21st, 2012.
Okay. How long do you generally keep records associated with your business?
7 years.
What was the time period between when this particular record was obtained by you and when you were requested to obtain it by law enforcement?
Well, the record would have been made when the student signed up for the class on June 20th, 2012. And then it would have just been maintained on GoDaddy's server until I had a request for the information. And that's when I would have printed this out. I did it immediately on when I was requested on July 21st.
Okay, when the information is inputted by someone looking to enroll in one of your classes, is that information then transmitted to the GoDaddy site that you're talking about within a reasonable time period?
It'd be instantly.
Okay. Based upon that, the records, are they kept within that time period until you go and either retrieve them or search for them as you were requested in this case?
Yes.
This particular exhibit, People's Exhibit 1090A, do you have knowledge about the particular writing class that is contained within this exhibit?
Basic knowledge as owner of the company, but I was not the instructor on the class.
I understand that, but based upon the record that is before you, this June 2012 time period, were there classes involved, writing instructor classes involved during that time period?
Yes.
And do you in fact have knowledge of the event that's reported that's contained within People's Exhibit 1090A?
Yes.
I again, Judge, would move for admission of People's Exhibit 1090A.
All right, would counsel please approach? All right, the exhibit is admitted without objection at this time. So P-TR-1090A is admitted and may be published.
Permission to publish. The first page, please. Sir, what are we looking at here?
This is a copy of the, where the student registered, paid for a class. Basically, this is the invoice I get to tell me that somebody has scheduled themselves for a class and paid for it.
This particular portion of People's Exhibit 1090A, does it have a customer information associated with it?
Yes.
Where is that located?
Above where it says order details, there's a line there that gives us the customer's email address. Below order details tells us when they made the registration, when they paid for it, the class that they are signing up for, and beneath that is the billing address for the credit card that they pay with.
What is the customer email?
It looks like, and this is not a perfectly clear copy, but it looks like DAHERFOCKB@hotmail.com.
Could that also read dsherlockb@hotmail.com?
Yes, it could.
I'm going to refer you down to the order details. Below that, it appears to say created. Do you see where I'm referring to?
Yes.
What is the date associated with that?
Wednesday, June 20th, 2012.
Keep going on that.
The time.
Now, what I'm looking for is, keep going to the right there. Is there an IP address associated with that?
Yes, there is.
Okay. If we could scroll down just a bit more in People's Exhibit 1090A, please. Tell the jury, if you would, please, what course was signed up for by dsherlockb@hotmail.com.
The Basic Rider course at the Lowry campus in Denver, June 23rd, 2012.
How many days would that course have been?
2 days,
How much was the total of that course?
$175.
If we could scroll down a bit more in this exhibit, please. What does the billing address relate to?
Billing address lists James Holmes. It appears to be 1600 Paris Street, number 10, Aurora, Colorado, 80010.
Fair to say this is not the most legible exhibit you've probably seen, is that correct?
Correct.
Could that also be 1690 Paris Street?
Yes, it could.
Do you have information about how this particular course was paid?
Yes, I do.
How was it paid for?
Would have been paid for by credit card, by MasterCard, yes.
What were the last 4 digits of the credit card, please?
Looks like 2217.
If we could go to the second page of People's Exhibit 1090A. That'd be the back of that exhibit. Do you see that, sir?
Yes.
What information does this contain?
It gives us the authorization code for the transaction. Once again, it gives us the address for the customer. In this case, it's shipping address, which is generally, since we don't actually ship anything, it just, generally it's the billing address.
At the bottom, I see a 1 basic writer course at the Lowry campus in Denver. Do you see that information?
Yes.
Below that, it says Colorado most eligible. What does most stand for?
Motorcycle operator safety training.
Just going to have one moment, please.
Yes.
Nothing additional, Judge. Thank you.
Any cross-examination, Mr. King?
Briefly, Your Honor, can I do it from here, or do you want me to go to the podium?
You can do it from there as long as you stand and you speak into the microphone.
It's a little awkward, but I just have a couple
Your
of
call.
questions for you, sir. You said that the only requirements were that the person have a valid operator's license. Is that right?
That's one of the primary requirements, yes.
How about clothing requirements?
There are certain clothing requirements, yes.
Is one of those clothing requirements that the student have actual boots as opposed to like tennis shoes to wear?
We would say sturdy footwear that covers your ankles.
Thank you. No other questions.
Any redirect, Mr. Edson?
No, thank you, Judge.
The jury may have a question for you, sir, so if you would give us a moment, please. Thank you. Thank you. Counsel, please approach. You should know by now.
It's like an open invitation.
All right, sir, the jury has submitted a question that, based on the rules of evidence and other applicable rules of law, I have found is appropriate. The question is, were the motorcycle classes that the defendant signed up for off-road bikes or street bikes?
Street bikes.
Any follow-up questions, Mr. Edson?
No, Your Honor.
Any follow-up questions, Mr. King?
No, thank you, sir.
May this witness be released from his subpoena, Mr. Edson?
Judge, I would request that he remain under subpoena in case we need some additional foundation.
All right. So, sir, you're free to go for now, but you may be called again, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, members of the jury, it's almost 3:20, so let's go ahead and take our afternoon break. I know I gave you a break earlier. You get a bonus break today. But I need to give my staff and everyone else a break. So let's take a 17-minute break. It's 3:17, so almost 20 minutes. I'll see you back here at 3:35, okay? Thank you. The record should reflect that the jury has exited the courtroom now. Everyone may be seated. Is there anything else we need to take up at this time on behalf of the people, Mr. Edson?
No, Your Honor.
Anything on behalf of the defense, Mr. King?
No, sir.
All right, have a good break. I'll see you back in about 16 minutes. Thank you.